Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salatu wa salamu ala ibadihi alladhina astafa. My dear brothers, amongst the innovations that were created and were introduced in the religion of the Islam after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, there were many of them. But today we are just going to comment on one of those, which is Mawlidun-Nabi, which is celebrating the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ as sun advanced. This is an innovation that was introduced into Islam well later after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. During his lifetime, during the lifetime of the companions, none of these things were known. During the lifetime of the A'immat al-Fiqh, during the lifetime of Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad, during the lifetime of A'immat al-Hadith, Bukhari, Malik, none of these terms were known. Nothing such as celebrating the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ was known at that time. So it's something that was introduced much later, and it was introduced with the Dawlah al-Ubaydiyah, which is one of the sects of the Shia, when they took the governance of the Muslim community at some point in the Islamic history. And that was around the end of the 4th century of the Islamic calendar. So they introduced amongst that which they introduced in the community of the Islam, and they introduced, unfortunately, many things in this religion. Amongst that which they introduced was the celebration of the Prophet ﷺ, which is, within some communities, it's still something of value, and it's still something that is well present. This is one of the innovations that they have introduced. They have introduced also the innovation of the Ashura, that up to today, the Shia in Iran, you would see that they are celebrating that day by slapping themselves, by torturing themselves, because as they claim that Hussein was killed that day, so this is an opportunity for them to revive that history. And none of these things, none of these innovations are good innovations, as some might claim. As I mentioned, none of these were known at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. None of these were known at the time of his companions. At the best times, the best centuries of the Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he said clearly, خَيْرُ الْقُرُونِ قَرْنِي ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. The best centuries is mine, then the one that follows it, then the one that follows it. So, during those centuries, none of these innovations were known. None of these innovations were introduced. And as I say, they were introduced much later in the Islamic calendar. And a lot of these innovations, with the willingness of Allah Azza wa Jal, have disappeared. Apart from some of the innovations that are still present up to today, which is, one of them is Mawlidun-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the other is Ashura, that the Shia have still kept up to today. And a lot of the innovations that this state, the Dawla al-Ubaydiyah, have introduced in the Islam, when they took the governance of the Islamic community, have disappeared. However, we just need to go back to the source. We need to go back to what the Prophet ﷺ has used to do. Because in a lot of people's minds, in a lot of people's hearts, they are attached to that which they have done for years and years. They are attached to that which they found their parents doing. They are attached to that kind of celebration that they found their relatives doing. And it is very difficult to change something which they have grown upon. However, al-haqqu ahaqqu an yuttaba', the truth has more right to be followed than what we found our parents doing, or what we found our relatives doing, or that which the community thinks is best. Allah Azza wa Jalla يقول وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And if you obey most of the people on earth, they are going to mislead you from the way of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So it's not because a lot of people are doing it that it becomes right. It's not because a lot of people are giving it importance that all of a sudden it becomes important. It only becomes important, it only can be important if the Prophet ﷺ has given it importance. It can only be important if the people after the Prophet ﷺ, the people who are the best of the community, the companions that Allah Azza wa Jalla has described, saying, لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla was pleased with them. Allah Azza wa Jalla said it clearly, He was pleased with them. They have not introduced any of these. There are only two Eid in Islam. Eid al-Fitr, that closes the month of Ramadan, and Eid al-Adha, which is the revival of that historical moment in which Ibrahim was willing to sacrifice his son for the sake of pleasing Allah Azza wa Jalla. There is no other Eid in Islam. not for the birth of or the death of any prophet or messenger, including our prophet. We don't celebrate his birth, we don't celebrate his death, we don't celebrate any other prophet's birth or death. We don't celebrate the establishment of a new government or the victory upon such and such enemy. What we celebrate is what Allah Azza wa Jal has installed, what the Prophet ﷺ has made it a day of celebration. When he went to the Medina and he found the boys of the Medina, he found the youngsters of the Medina celebrating in some days. He said, what is that day? They said, Yawm Ashura. He said, أبدلكم الله عز وجل خير منهما عيد الفطر وعيد الأضحى. Allah Azza wa Jal has replaced any previous celebration by these 2 days, which are Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And this is his word, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A lot of people, when you tell them the truth, they find it so difficult to change from what they found their parents doing. A lot of people, when you tell them, when you clarify to them that this is not something that is good to be done, because the Prophet ﷺ has not done, and just for the sake of this argument, we shouldn't be doing it. And when you tell that to a lot of people, they find it so difficult to change. They find it so difficult to accept, to leave off that which they have been doing for years and years. But this is what the Quran has blamed other communities before us. وَكَذَلِكَ مَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ فِي قَرْيَةٍ مِّن نَذِيرٍ إِلَّا قَالَ مُتْرَفُوهَا. And thus, in the same manner, every time we have sent a prophet or messenger to community, the majority what they said, إِنَّا وَجَدْنَا آبَاءَنَا عَلَى أُمَّةٍ وَإِنَّا عَلَى أَثَرِهِمْ مُقْتَدُونَ. We have found our parents doing something and we are going to follow what they have done. And they were misled by that way. So we need, my dear brothers, to avoid such statement. We need to avoid doing what our parents have done or what the community, what might seem important within the community. As I mentioned, the importance can only be given to something if the Prophet ﷺ has given it importance. If the Quran is highlighting something, then yes, we can give it importance. There are so many arguments that those who celebrate it will advance. None of those arguments are valid. I'm not going to list all of them. But if you want, if you are interested, if you are staunch on really doing such thing, I'm more than happy to stay with you hours and hours if you want to tell you all of those arguments. Why? Because as I say, some of those arguments might seem valid. Some of those arguments might seem fair, while they are not. And as I say, just remember one thing. Remember, and I will finish with this, inshallah ta'ala. Remember one thing. There is no innovation in Islam except that is something that leads to hellfire. Prophet ﷺ, he said, كُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ. Every innovation is a misguidance. Prophet ﷺ, he said every. The word in every in Arabic or any language on earth means everything. It encompasses everything. All the bid'ah, all the types, whether you call it this, whether you give it another name, whether you try to escape by changing the name, by changing what it refers to, Prophet ﷺ, he said every innovation is a misguidance, and every misguidance leads to hellfire. صلى الله العظيم ربنا العظيم أن ينفعنا بما سمعنا وأن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. اللهم اصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا ودنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وآخرتنا التي إليها معادنا واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير. اللهم اجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم اغننا بحلالك عن حرامك وبفضلك عما سواك. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين. عباد الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم ارض عن الخلفاء الراشدين. اللهم ارض عن أبي بكر. اللهم ارض عن عمر، عن عثمان، عن علي، عن باقي الصحب أجمعين، خصوصا الأنصار منهم والمهاجرين. اللهم ارض عنهم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعلنا واحشرنا في زمرتهم. اللهم احشرنا في زمرتهم ومعهم يا حنان يا منان. اللهم إنا نسألك بأسمائك الحسنى وصفاتك العلى أن تجعلنا ممن يستمع القول فيتبع أحسنه، أن تجعلنا ممن استهداك فهديته وممن استنصرك فنصرته. اللهم لا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم لا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم إنا نسألك بأسمائك الحسنى وصفاتك العلى من موجبات الخير كلها. اللهم إنا نسألك من الخير كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم، ونعوذ بك من الشر كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون وقوموا إلى الصلاة. يرحمكم الله.